Free mind, you crazy for this. Soulful. It's like our responsibility to make us feel something. You know, to make people feel what we feeling. Hey, yo.
Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This is Comics Today, a show that we do on Wednesday to celebrate the best day of the week, that being New Comic Book Day. And the question that I have to ask is today Wednesday, and is it 7 p.m.? I asked that question because somehow or another we went live 30 minutes early on Sunday. I don't know what happened, but I am trying to get myself together and to avoid any type of confusion from anybody who popped into the show and thought that they were early, late, whatever it happens to be. I think we have gotten ourselves together. As part of this show, what we typically do is talk about some news and current events, and I typically have a guest or two on to help me to make sense of some of the stuff that is happening in the world of comics and collectibles. And tonight we are going to have a guest, and we are going to continue a conversation that I started as an impromptu conversation on that fated Sunday show. I think we're going to have as good, if not better, a conversation tonight because it's a little more planned than that previous one. And for those that don't know, we actually released this podcast or released this show as part of a podcast. It comes out on Monday, and it's out on all of the podcasting platforms that are out there. We just exceeded 30,000 downloads for the podcast. I think there's like 165 episodes or something like that that are available. So if you're out and about and you want to take some Reggie on the go, you can actually do it as part of the podcast on your preferred podcasting platform. You just search Regie Collects and you will find me there. We are going to go to the chat here momentarily, and I want to know if you went to the LCS today and you picked up a book. I want to know what you picked up, and if you want to shout your LCS, do that. If you read a book and it was a good book and we should be in the know, I want you to tell us what that book was so that we can add it to our reading list. And if you got a book, but it wasn't a new book, but it was a new book to you, I want to know about that as well. But before I get there, before I go to the chat, so you all hold your horses. Before we get there, I want to announce the winners of the guide giveaway. We had Matt Nelson, the president of CGC, on the show about a week ago, and we did an interview with him talking about the new guide that he has come out with, the official guide to comic book grading from CGC. We're going to give away a copy of that. We're also going to give away a copy, an advanced copy of the guide to smart comic collecting. This is where you're going to be. This really is it. This is an advanced copy that we did for New York Comic Con. Doug Bratton, this guy, some of you may know him, has done a fantastic job of putting this thing together, and we are going to give that away along with Matt Nelson's guide. His guide's 400 pages. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's bigger than my book, but it's a good book. So is my book. You know, they're all good books. All right. So let me tell you who the winners are. And these winners were randomly selected from the comments that were left on the Matt video. And I want to make sure that I do these in the right order. This is the first place. William. William is the winner, and William, he has a full and robust comment here. Make sure you send me an email to reggie@regiecollects.com. 1G. William, you will be able to pick which guide you want. I encourage you to pick wisely, but pick your guide, send me your mailing address, and we will get your guide sent out to you just as swiftly as we can. And whatever guide you don't take, whichever one, William, you do not take, it will the other guy will go to this person right here, Danny. Danny will get the other guide, and so it'll be a complete surprise for Danny because he won't know what's coming his way. But William, you were the first name that was pulled, and Danny, you were the second. So congrats to both of those individuals for taking the time to comment and watch that interview and then comment on that video. So shout out to both of them. And like I said, we will get this stuff bundled up and sent out to you. CGC will be sending their guide out directly. I'll be sending mine out. And so again, just send me all the information to Reggie@ReggieCollects.com, mailing address, government name, all that good stuff. And stuff will be bundled up and sent out to you. All right. So let me go to the chat real quick. And I want to see what it is that you guys may have picked up. Alex says, watching this live from my kitchen. I think you're watching from your kitchen, me live. The way you wrote that, it makes it seem like you're live. Anyway, but no, shout out to you, Alex. Chris says both my aliases one. No, sir. No, sir. I know your address, sir. We will not be sending anything to you, Chris Bigger. Just picked up 13 books, 10,000 Black Feathers, The Silver Coin, Eve, and are all good reads. He said, I had a number of Marvel books like Carnage and Predator. That's what's up. Thank you, Steve White, for sharing that. What is that? Rob says, I did manage to make it to the LCS Coliseum of Comics in Oakland. I'm sorry, in Oakleaf, right? Sorry about that. In Oakleaf, Jacksonville, Florida. But I'm not going to list out 39 books. Please don't. Please don't list out that many books. But he picked up, what did he pick up? Spawn, some Marvel DC, and Sacrament is good, man. Sacrament is a good read. I am thoroughly enjoying that. From issue number 1, I enjoyed it. It's a little sacrilegious, but Sacrament is not bad at all. Picked up Thor 337, says Bulldog. Not a new book, but a new book to him. That's what's up. TMX is in the house. Picked up Deadly Spider-Man. There you go. I'm scrolling through. Everybody congratulating Chris Bigger on his win. Jason, how you doing? Aloha to you as well. Which island are you on? Big island, smaller islands? Where are you, my friend? Scrolling through. Frog Brawler is up in here. Picked up a ton of books. Avengers, Cap, Deadly Spider-Man, Midnight Suns, Moon Knight, Batman 1 Bad Day, Penguin, and a couple of other books, including a Black Adam facsimile. That's what's up. Scrolling through, finally got back my first ever CBCS submission, ASM 313, ASM 325. Let me see. What is that? It sure is nice feeling to see a comic book I've had for 34. Wow. There you go. That's what's up. Shout out to Jeff. Congrats on being able to get your books back. I'm not going to ask how long it took or what the grades are, but I will say congratulations to you. I will say that. Scrolling through some of the other comments. Kevin, how you doing, brother? It's good to see you. Picked up Duo, I Am Batman, Deadly Neighborhood, Spider-Man, etc. Oh, he says he closing in on my run. That's what's up. Good luck, brother. Getting the run of ASM is a daunting task, no doubt about it. Saturday will be my 1 year since I sent in my first CBCS submission. Happy anniversary to you, sir. Happy anniversary. They beat my 1 year anniversary by like 5 days, if you guys remember. So, Philtastic, I feel your pain, sir. Phil was actually a guest. He did not show up on camera, but he was a guest on the impromptu ill-fated Sunday show as a Patreon member. So I want to thank you, brother. We definitely appreciate you popping your head in, if you will. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. You can't come in here saying aloha. You're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, brother. That's not allowed. Oh my goodness. Turbo Todd, how you doing, brother? It is good to see you, my friend. Let me see. Bought a few books, but have you seen that Midnight Suns Blade variant? I'll be honest with you, Trev. I have not, brother. I was neck deep. In 197 slides. We are planning, we're doing annual brand planning at work, and I took on the task of building the brand strategic deck. It's 197 slides, not including backups. The question is, yes, or the answer is yes, I did almost die, because that is a lot of slides. Actually, as a Catholic, sacrament so far hasn't been that bad. Depending upon how religious you are, sir, some of that could be a little sacrilegious. Again, I would say I am enjoying it, and I understand the point of view. Scrolling down through the comments here. What is that? Managed to find a second printing of the glow-in-the-dark Ghost Rider. There you go. That's a dope book, bro. That's a dope book. I think let's just say I found a lot of those in the 100K collection. Some of them actually found their way into the Swoldier supply box that I was doing for several months there. Mr. E, how you doing? The new Thor, Carnage, Gunslinger, Deadly Neighborhood, Spider-Man, that's what's up. Scrolling through L. Smith, he never lets me down. Canadian brother. Carnage 7, Catwoman 48, DC versus Vampires 4, Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Moon Knight issue number 16, Immortal Red Sonja issue number 7, etc., etc. Scrolling through the comments. Wait a minute. It's a versus? Frog versus Toad? Scrolling. Shout out to Rick's Comic City. All 3 locations. Least we forget one of them. That's what's up. I got books at CGC for 18 months at this point. That is painful. That is painful, brother. Goodness. I mean, again, as we've already demonstrated just in the last couple of minutes, I think that the grading companies continue to be behind. L. Smith's getting on board with that. All right, so I'll show you guys a couple of books found their way to me today. I did not go to an LCS, but I did manage to get a couple of books from mycomicshop.com, where I have a pull list set up. Got Venom issue number 11. I think I've only read one. I think issue number 1 was the only one that I've read. I am so behind on my reading. I'll be completely honest with you. I started reading Aliens, the original Aliens comic. I started reading that. I got it back graded, and I was like, maybe I should actually read this. So I started reading that. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 11. And talk about homages. There you go. There's another one right there. Or homage. Someone corrected me on that. It's actually homage, not an homage, but a homage, which sounds weird to me. This is issue number 11 right there of Amazing Spider-Man. So those are the only new books that I have managed to pick up. All right, let me see. I'm trying to see if I'm all caught up. Fight the good fight. How you doing, brother? It's good to see you. I will tell you, if you guys are paying attention, there are a lot of people that are offering books up right now on the Instagram. There are sales aplenty at discounts. I mean, people are taking some losses on some books right now. And if you guys remember, many months ago, we started talking about the recession and things that could potentially happen, the market slowdown, prices taking a dip. I had people calling me crazy. But one of the things that we talked about was potentially keeping our powder dry. And if you happen, for whatever reason, to decide to keep your powder dry, now is a good time, because people are starting to sell books for lots of different reasons at reduced cost. It is just something that I've been seeing more and more of. So I thought that I would mention it to you guys. I mean, I've had people, reach out to me. Hey, I have 45 books. I have an entire collection. I have this, I have that. Are you interested? So there's a lot of stuff that is happening right now. You guys are hilarious. All right. So with that, I do want to go ahead. So again, we did announce the winners of the giveaway. So if you came in a little late, I definitely want to encourage you guys to go back and watch the beginning, because potentially if your name is, I can't remember, William was one, and I can't remember the other one. If your name happens to either be William, or let me see if I can get that, or Danny, you could be entitled to a free gift from Regie Collects and CGC. So I definitely want to encourage you guys to tune in for that. All right. So the other thing that we wanted to get to tonight, which is probably the big topic, is influencers. And I brought this up on the Sunday show, the ill-fated Sunday show. And we had a couple of Patreon members that popped in to have a conversation with me to maybe help me to understand, what influencers were and the role that they played. And after that show, I had actually a number of people reach out to me to kind of offer some supplementary thinking around this. And I wanted to have an additional guest on to spend a little more time talking about the role that influencers play. And so I wanted to invite somebody on that I think has a fresh perspective, definitely a perspective that I think warrants a little bit of conversation. And so I want to welcome to the show Matt Kennedy, who, if I can find my cursor, happens to be a blogger for Go Collect. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Reggie. Thanks for having me on.
That is a very fancy background. It's very formal with the gold frames back there. I dig that, sir. It's well
Yes,
done.
I was a art gallerist for decades, and recently moved to Las Vegas, thinking about opening another gallery here. I left Pasadena, represented a lot of people who have also worked in comics.
There you go. I
Mhm.
do like the gold frames. Did you say Pasadena, California?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was there. I spent a lot of time in Pasadena. I lived there in that area roughly for about 6 years. So,
And we never bumped into each other. That's crazy.
well, I wasn't doing comics then. I was just selling drugs as a drug dealer, a legal
Oh.
legal drug dealer. So, but I was all up and down that corridor. There was a couple of really good sushi spots there that I used to go
Yep.
to on like a Wednesday. We would take
Mhm.
an extended lunch as sales reps and hang out, making a lot of noise at lunch. But anyway, Matt, I want to welcome you to the show. And
Mhm.
you reached out to me after the Sunday show and you offered up some additional thoughts about influencers. And that kind of
Mhm.
piqued my curiosity. And I was like, you know what? Why don't you come on the show? Let's talk about it. The
Sure.
very first thing that I want to get from you, Matt, is a definition. How
Okay.
do you define comic book influencers?
I think, in the broadest of terms, an influencer is a public figure who commands an amount of respect from an audience large enough to collectively alter a specific market or demographic or opinion. In other words, in order to qualify as a quote unquote influencer, that person has to have the ability to encourage or dissuade the decision making process of others based on the information that he or she provides to their audience.
That was a
But I
very
think,
that was a
yeah,
very
oh,
deep
sorry.
that was a very deep definition. I like that. But part of what I heard in there was size, right?
Mhm.
Size and the ability to influence.
Yes.
Given our niche hobby, what is the size? Right? Because we don't even know how many people are in the hobby, right? So
Right.
where's the cutoff? Like how do you delineate who is and isn't an influencer using size, which is a criteria, and the
Mhm.
ability to influence as another criteria?
Well, all things being relative, it really, in our hobby, people I think who pay attention to a lot of the YouTubers or Instagrammers or even the whatnot sellers, wherever you're getting news or information or content about
Mhm.
comics, it's relative to the overall size of that niche market.
Yep.
So if there are 5 people in the world that collect gold-plated frogs, and all 5 of them subscribe to one person's channel, they are the most influential gold frog collector in the world.
That's a good way to look at
So
it.
yeah, and I think, lately when we talk about influencers, the context is really different depending upon where the conversation is going. And I think that, currently we've got to make distinctions between what the focus of the conversation is in order to give even context to a specified definition. And we're seeing lately a lot of people use it as a pejorative, like where when you
It's
hear the word
dirty.
influencers,
It's
it's a
dirty.
dirty word.
It
Yeah.
is there. Like somebody called me that. I was like, I don't want that title. Felt like Charles Barkley. I am not a role model. Like, no, don't label me with that. But with what I heard you say there, and I want to clarify.
Hmm.
In your mind, do you see influencers, by your definition, to be a homogenous group of people, or are there sectors or segments within that group that is defined as a comic book influencer?
I think there's not only different types of influencers, there's different leagues.
Okay.
Everybody has their lane. And so I think, like when you hear it used pejoratively, and again, like the person who called you an influencer may have been paying you a compliment, saying that you're someone who I subscribe to your channel,
Hmm.
I watch your shows, I listen to what you have to say, and I respect it. And I make decisions about my collecting habits based upon the information that you give.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of that, which are the people that blow up at a lot of stuff online. And I think, we're all familiar with the term the Twitter mob. I think that every single type of social media has its mob.
Mm.
And so that when used pejoratively, I think that the people within the comic collecting community who who have a low opinion of the individuals whom they associate with the term influencer, they're specifically pigeonholing and not even all, but a segment of dealers and resellers whose online content is either solely or mostly specifically for the purpose of selling things. And a frequent tool used in that endeavor is speculation. But I mean, there's even different lanes there, because providing advice based on market research to justify a purchase is very different from inventing a reason for the sole purpose of selling merchandise.
Yep. And the challenge, I mean, what I heard you say there, because there may be some people that don't fully appreciate it. So I'll play it back to make sure I understand it, but maybe also to clarify. What I'm hearing you say is that it's not a homogenous group.
Correct.
Influencers can be broken down into different categories, maybe dependent upon the type of content that they produce and the purpose of the content, and maybe even the quality of that content.
Exactly.
Did I say anything incorrect there? And either way, what would you add to that?
Oh, I think you said it absolutely correctly. And I think that, with all things being equal, if all things were equal, the grand separator would be the quality of the content. So like even the term content creator, anybody who puts a single image or a blank screen with a word on it, that's content.
You're right.
Now, is it quality content? That's where subjectivity comes into it. It's, the level of appreciation it gets. It's how good is it? And that's opinion. Yep. So there's a sliding scale. Everybody has a notion of what their taste is, of what they consider to be rewarding content, what they consider to be valuable content. And so like when I think of, the differences in what separates one content creator from another, or what makes one influential versus a quote unquote influencer, is that there's a big difference between a content creator and a huckster. And I think that the term huckster carries with it a sort of inherent idea, and probably not an attractive idea, but it's not inherently bad.
It's like a carpetbagger.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really, really good comparison. And a carpetbagger was seen as an insult at a point in time, but not always.
But finish your thought, because I interrupted. I had to. It's not every day I get to use the word carpetbagger, so I had to jump in there.
Sure.
Finish with your thought, though.
Yeah. So I think that not all resellers are hucksters, and sometimes a content creator becomes a reseller. Sometimes a content creator actually becomes a huckster. Not all resellers are hucksters. Not all hucksters are influencers.
Right.
But, when I use the term content creator, I'm inferring an objective level of quality. So when you talked about quality, it's the quality or the lack thereof that establishes which lane an influencer is in. And, my favorite comic collecting YouTubers are really, I think, just enthusiastic educators who occasionally editorialize, because everything in this hobby is opinion.
Yeah.
All speculation is opinion. I mean, you can get your charts, and you can kind of go through and dig and look up things and figure out, oh, why does everybody think that this is the first appearance of, War Machine as opposed to this comic? Right. And what happens is that the hobby makes a decision. So whether or not your information is correct, it gets disseminated through groups of people who have discussions about things like we're having right now on your channel.
Yep.
And people take away from that what they like. And then when you add on top of it the changing nature of how we collect, the fact that with slabbing, you don't see the interior. So having something on the cover or on the back cover becomes very, very important to the way that we collect and look at things and value them.
Agreed.
So that criteria you can apply not just to the things that we collect, but to the people that we listen to and the people that we watch and the content that we enjoy. And so I think as long as someone is creating content that has a value beyond the value that it has to them in creating it, that they're providing some kind of service. And clearly, there are fans who've become publishers. I've been following your channel for a really long time. I started following it because you did a great video years ago about how to press and clean your own comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that I was a fan from the jump right there. Like, I'm like, this is a service.
Yeah.
This is a public service. That is an educational purpose.
But part of it goes to my purpose.
Hmm.
My purpose of my channel is to make sense of comic book collecting, right? And it is to provide people with information that allows them to better appreciate this hobby. It is not necessarily to tell them what to do
Right.
or to encourage them to do just this thing because I say it, right? And
Right.
sometimes, I mean, I even create videos that I argue with myself. I do both sides of the argument because there is no answer. It's more
Right.
about like, here are some things for you to consider and think about. But one of the things that you hit on is that there are these different lanes, if you will. And I see a blog post coming out of this for you, but there's these different lanes of people that produce content for a variety of purposes. How does one know where that person falls in which lane? Like, how do you know that, right? Because you could be watching a huckster without
Yeah.
knowing that you're watching a huckster, and you're thinking that it's educational, but it's really somebody that is creating a thing for the purpose of bringing value to them and not adding value to the hobby. How do you figure that out?
So I think there's two things, right? I think that on one hand, that person's content speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you amass an oeuvre of content, people can tell from video to video your level of authenticity.
Mm.
You know, I don't think there's too many people that watch somebody's, if they like the content and they watch somebody's video, they don't watch just one video, they'll continue watching that person's video. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with just selling stuff online. Like
we are going to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that what really becomes an issue is that there's a combination of the quote unquote influencer establishes a pattern, and then the audience establishes their own interpretation of that. So both people are contributing to whether or not the person who is viewing them through that lens of influence or how they feel about it. So like I say, when someone called you an influencer, I think they're correct, because I think that you have influence, but depending upon how they had intended it, you would understand by the way that they said it, even reading it. And even reading it on social media where you don't have bolding, you don't have italics, and you can kind of read tone, but you can't always read tone. And I think that there's a danger there too, but I think authenticity is a really important part of that defining principle. But I think there's also, transparency is a very, very important thing. And there's a lot of nuance about transparency. So I think that, it's important to understand the optics of your interest in a thing, and whether or not people understand the level of your interest. And when I say interest, I mean like your benefit or your financial investment in a thing.
Yep.
So if I found a box of Howard the Duck #1s in a yard sale, and I don't like Howard the Duck, and I post, this amazing, very positive thing about Howard the Duck #1, so I can slowly sell off this box of 150 Howard the Ducks, that's disingenuous, and it's also lacking in authenticity. And in some markets, not disclosing your connection to something that you are promoting is not only objectively possibly unethical, but can be illegal.
Yep.
And in this hobby, we're not regulated like that. Like, we're not regulated like the stock market, like banking, like the pharmaceutical industry, where, there are certain things that you can do and you have to disclose. If anybody's ever watched television after 10 o'clock at night and a commercial for medicine comes on, someone speed reads through all the bad things that can possibly happen if you take that medication in, a 5-second stretch of the tail end of that commercial, because there are regulations about how medicine can be sold. We don't see TV commercials for cigarettes anymore because cigarettes were deemed too dangerous to promote. And I think that there's an element of unregulated markets that make them exciting, and there's an element that's very dangerous for the uneducated viewer. So like you say, someone can watch somebody and think that they're performing a public service, and then that person offers for sale at the end of that video the same thing they were talking about, that's an infomercial.
Yeah.
That is literally an infomercial.
So I want to backtrack because there was a lot there that I think we want to break down, but I want to make sure that I fully appreciated a viewer's ability to identify the lane that somebody falls in. I heard the first point of the content speaks for itself. What was the second point? What was the second method for a viewer to determine where somebody falls?
So we all bring our own experiences to everything. So two very reasonable people can watch the same video and come away with completely opposite opinions about it.
True.
And that's because we are the sum of our experiences. So where a viewer brings themselves to the content definitely has a bearing, and, not to put too fine a point on, an influence on how they receive the content. And then when they watch multiple videos by that same person over time, their own experience will contribute to how they view it as authentic, or if they view it as sneaky, if the person seems trustworthy. I mean, some of those things are beyond a person's control. The shape of one's mouth, there's the U-shaped mouth versus the C-shaped mouth. And so public speakers and politicians are always told celebrities generally have a U-shaped smile and not a C-shaped smile. So some people have very punchable faces, and there's all these things can come into, how someone is perceived. They could be giving you the best information possible, but if they're talking and there's mayonnaise on their face, you're gonna receive that kind of differently.
Now, what's funny is I received a couple of comments from people, and one of the comments that I saw said something like, the more personable a person happens to be, the more influence they will have. And I think that is the state of the world, but there is so much that I want to get to, but I want to get your opinion of a comment that was put up on the previous video that I did. And I think I blurred out the person's name because I didn't have time to get their permission. But I do want to get your opinion of this on the other side, because it piggybacks on something that you just said. And it says, in my humble opinion, the term influencer is a bit of a catch-all phrase in today's society, right? He goes on to say, I think anyone with a social media channel and an audience can be labeled an influencer, whether that is the intent of the content creator or not. It really comes down to the audience and how they are ingesting, digesting the content, how they are interpreting the message and communication, and what actions they are taking based upon that message. And it goes on to say some social media hosts are more blatant and forthcoming about their influential behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But what, as you hear this part, specifically the part about the audience and the audience ingestion of this content, what are your thoughts? What are the thoughts that come to mind as a result of this?
I agree with what they wrote. I think that it's inherently true, and it speaks to what we've been talking about, which is that, if you have, like I said, the golden frog collectors, that we invented on this particular podcast, that there may only be 5 of them, but if you reach all 5 of them, you have tremendous influence, and more influence in your own lane than someone who has 10,000 followers in a world of 20 million collectors. And not that anybody can shake a stick at 10,000, subscribers or even views, but that by comparison, in a ratio of 5 out of 5 to 10,000 out of 2 million or whatever, that smaller number carries a bigger influence within its own sphere. And, that's when relativity becomes a really, really important factor, because all things are relative in any comparison. So, non-disclosure is the type of thing that I think can hurt people. And so it's in someone's own benefit to be as forthcoming as possible, just to avoid the pratfalls of being viewed as being shady. So and there's all kinds of reasons that you may not say something because you don't think it's bad to not say it.
Yeah. But let's talk about that. How much transparency is the right amount of transparency, right? And is it enough to declare your interest in this thing once, or do you have to do it every single video, every single communication? Like what are your thoughts on how much that has to be done, right? Or can it be done too much, right?
You do run the risk of alienating your audience by over explaining things, right? And so and overly confessing things. You know, like if you're trying to get a message through and up front the message is, well, you really shouldn't listen to me because of this, then they're not going to listen to you. And I think some people do themselves a disservice by explaining things that are beyond the necessary amount of disclosure. And so, like I say, that non-disclosure can be an ethics violation. It can be illegal. It can also be, just an overlooked thing, where how important is it, or it's something that you take for granted. Like if it is inherently known, like if the name of your channel is I Sell Comics, do you really have to have a sign at the front of every video that says, by the way, I sell comics.
Right.
So there are certain things that I think that we do take for granted that not everybody is necessarily going to be aware of. And, there's that bell curve of people's understanding of a topic. And so there are going to be people that completely understand with very little explanation. There's going to be people that don't understand no matter the explanation.
Yep.
So I think that what's the real amount? The correct amount is the correct amount for whatever it is that the audience feels is necessary. And that's why it's usually better to be as transparent as possible. But I think, to your point, maybe it's explaining it once. I mean, I'm not sure how many videos you have up at this point on your channel, probably hundreds. You're probably encroaching in on several hundred. Yeah. So if you remind people of something that you made a point about earlier, that's new content to the people that just joined within the last couple of months or this week or, 2 hours ago.
That's the other part of it. I think you have to also think about like how many new people are coming to the channel. Right. Yep. And that's one thing that I think some people sometimes forget about is that a video is oftentimes someone's first video.
Yeah.
And so you have to find that balance between being repetitious for your current audience and giving the new people an ability to get on board. And so to that point, this conversation that we are having right now with Matt is going to be rebroadcast as part of the podcast, and it's available on all the podcasting platforms out there. I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. But I want to backtrack to something that you talked about earlier, and it was this idea that there are a lot of people that technically create content. Right. You have people on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on whatnot, like pick the platform, people are creating content. And sometimes that content is for the purpose of education, of entertainment. Sometimes it is simply for the purpose of selling some stuff. Right. And what I heard you say is that it's okay to create content for the purpose of selling stuff. Just be transparent about it. Is there any other advice that you would give people that might be viewed as influencers out there? Transparency, be clear, disclosure stuff in an appropriate manner. But what are some other things that you might offer up to them to consider?
Just as when you walk into a comic shop, some stores organize things by publishers. Sometimes they organize things by genre. Sometimes they organize things by maturity level. So I think that if you're creating a lot of versatile content, it helps to brand each different type of content unto itself under the umbrella of whatever your channel is. And that's what I love about your show is that you have different weekly shows that have different names that stick to topic because you're a likable guy. You're super enthusiastic. You know a lot more than most people about the hobby. And so it would be really easy for you to be all over the place in a single episode and for an episode to run 3.5 hours. I'm shocked at how many people do have like 3 and 4 hour shows like multiple times a week. And I'm like, who's there for all of that? But, so being concise, being, on topic, and providing any kind of service is going to be viewed as more valuable by the community at large. But like I say, you can just sell comics. If you're only selling comics, then your show is just selling comics. It's like a claim show.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There is
Absolutely
nothing
nothing
wrong with creating content for the purpose of selling a product or a service or any of that other stuff. I think that's important for people to hear, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think the issue becomes when there's a lack of transparency and that connection between what is being put out there and what is being done. When that linkage isn't there, that's where it becomes a problem. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Sometimes, your chocolate gets in somebody's peanut butter, and that's amazing. But sometimes it's, your chocolate gets in someone's tuna fish, and nobody wants that.
And that's just nasty.
That's just nasty. Yeah.
I actually don't like peanut butter, so I think that that's nasty too. But I get it. To each his or her own. It's not my jam, but it's not my place to call any of that stuff out. In your mind, what, and we kind of already hit this, but I want to ask the question a little bit differently. In your mind, what makes for a truly bad influencer? Like, encapsulate what is a bad influencer in your mind?
A bad influencer is someone who uses their platform specifically and only for personal gain at the detriment of their audience. I think that by any metric, I think everybody could agree that that would be a bad influencer. You can be incredibly selfish and just be producing content for you that doesn't hurt anybody, and that's completely fine. There would be nothing wrong with that. Like I say, if the only focus of your channel is selling comics and you're not speccing in addition to selling those comics, then that's just pure, commerce. Where it can get dodgy is that we all love to speculate. I mean, I write for Go Collect. Most of my columns are about speculation. I have a website called Popsequentialism where I've been selling comic art and I sell comic books. But I've never been a guy that bought deep on something. Like, I never bought 50 of something to have to sell. Like, I would buy a collection, I would get stuff slabbed, I would put that stuff up for sale. Frequently would not talk about the stuff I had for sale. And you get into this kind of this catch-22, right? Like, where you get excited about something, so you buy it, and then you tell everybody, hey, I just bought this because I think this is a good idea to buy this. Yep. Now, your intention is good.
Yep.
But there's that risk of bad optics when you sell it, of, did he pump that up just to sell it? Yep. But again, I think, like, via the collection, the totality of the content you put up, it will be evident that you were excited about this thing and wanted to talk about it and wanted to make an argument for why this was a smart thing to do. And that's, like I say, that's justifying a purchase. That's not inventing a reason to purchase something.
Well said. I'll tell you, man, I've had people accuse me of stuff, and I honestly go out of my way to avoid as many conflicts of interest as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. Like, we do spec videos. I don't buy the book. Like, Doug actually writes the content for some of the spec videos. And so I don't buy the book. I get the script. I see what's coming. I know what we're going to talk about. I purposefully do not buy those books because when people accuse me of things, I can honestly say, no, not at all. How many of these books do you own? Not a single one, because I don't tiptoe that line. I want to keep it as clean as possible, and I just want to avoid any kind of issues. Like, I genuinely love this hobby, and
that is evident.
Yeah. And I want nothing, Blue Wrenches, get that for me. And I want nothing but the best for this hobby. And I try to spend a lot of time thinking about, well, if I do this, I say this, what might be the impact? I don't always get it right. You know what I'm saying? But my intent is good. And I think that people recognize that, right? But there is a certain weight that comes with that. Right. I could imagine being just a person that wants to put some stuff on Instagram and sling some books. And it's like, I don't want to have to be bothered with all that stuff. I get it. And that's kind of why I asked you the question about tips for those people, because to the point of Charles Barkley, I'm not a role model. right?
Yeah.
Like not everyone wants to carry that weight. They just want to do their thing. And so again, that's kind of why I asked that question. And I'll pause to see whether you have any thoughts on that last little riff that I just did there.
Sure. And, obviously we have to go back to the great Stan Lee quote, with great power comes great responsibility. But I think that, another thing, and you touched on this, and so I think it's worth going into a little bit, which is, again, a lot of people, and certainly you, have spent a lot of time building up your audience and building up a platform, and you're a creative person. So when you got into publishing a comic, of course, you're proud of it.
Yeah.
Nobody could possibly fault you for, making videos about, the fact that you transitioned from a guy talking about comics to a guy that makes comics.
Yep.
That's exciting. That's inspirational. And so I think that there's nothing wrong with that. That's like, I think everybody deserves, as a reward for, the years that can be involved in taking your free time and putting it into producing good and high quality content that people enjoy without getting paid until you reach that point of being able to monetize through views, that you've created an audience that likes what you like. So if you make something, there's a good, strong chance that those same people that like what you do are going to like this other thing. And that's not a conflict of interest. There's nothing wrong with kind of tooting your own horn and using your own format to do it. It's when you're tooting a horn for somebody else and people don't understand that you have some kind of arrangement or some kind of agreement, and a lot of I think when we think of the commercial, we'll say career term influencer, is that someone has a huge audience, someone pays them to promote a product, and for a while they could do that without even saying that they were doing that. Now you actually have to, cop to the fact that you're
click that button sometimes that says it's a paid promotion. Yeah.
And so that has helped. Like that requirement by some of the social networks has actually helped prevent a lot of conflicts of interest. But I mean, I would write, an article about something from my own site where I talked about, my 50 favorite horror movies or something. Timely time of the year to be able to talk about that. So I recently reposted a couple of lists about my favorite horror films. There are links in that post that go to Amazon where you can purchase it. And it does have my affiliate code on it. But, I'm not just loading up the page with a bunch of stuff for you to click on, because it's pertinent to the fact that I like that thing. But I think I have somewhere on my website the fact that if you click on a link that leads you to another site, you're possibly generating money through my affiliates. And it's not on every single post, but it's on like the notes of the what do they call it? The usually on the about section. But
there you go.
Yeah.
But again, it's about that transparency, right? And finding that right balance to be, authentic and transparent with your audience, not misleading, not taking advantage of them. It is not easy. I will tell you that it is not an easy thing, but it's something that, again, I have chosen to take this on and try to do a good job of navigating it. And hopefully something that we've said here over the course of this conversation will help, maybe other content creators or other sellers or just people that watch and consume and according to the person I quoted, ingest and digest the content that is out there. But Matt, I want to thank you for coming on and spending a little bit of time with me to help make sense of this influencer world. Where can people get a hold of you on the social medias?
So on Instagram and Twitter, which I never pay attention to Twitter, it's at popsequentialism, which was the name of an exhibition that I curated back in 2011 as a tribute to the great collaborations between writers and artists. And I didn't realize when I put that together that it was the first time anybody had done a modern comic survey based on that criteria. There have been exhibitions of single issues, that have been exhibitions of a single artist's work. But in a fine art context, no one had done that work. And in an art gallery and on an art gallery website where you have to write explanations of what the artwork is, I realized I've written like 80 pages. Like this isn't just going to live on a server. I'm going to publish this. And so I got Last Gasp to publish it with La Luz de Jesus Gallery, the gallery I ran at the time. But I included prices because I wanted it to be sort of like a moment in time price guide, so that when you went back and looked at it, now it's 11 years later, you know, you go
Wow.
back and look at the prices on some of that artwork and you see
Cheap.
what you could have bought and what it's worth now.
Yep.
And I had written an article for Forbes about how buying, you know, published provenanced art is one of the illustration art specifically is one of the best returns on investment over 10-year periods.
Yep.
But that ended up yielding a podcast on the Meltdown Network for years, which was the sister network of Nerdist. And then I kind of brought it back to the original brand, which was popsequentialism from podsequentialism, and started a kind of pop culture site. But, you know, to your point, I've actually stepped back from selling comics. I have a couple that are on, like maybe 6 comics that are on the site, and I deal mainly in memorabilia, which I don't write articles about, because I want to be more of a news source, seen more as a journalist than necessarily as a collector, but using my collector knowledge to tell people what I'm into and hopefully encourage them to make good investment decisions, with the caveat that none of us has a crystal ball. Anything can change. And just because someone appears in a movie doesn't mean that comic gets more valuable.
Oh, well said, brother. I actually had that conversation with somebody earlier today. But Matt Kennedy, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on and spending a little bit of time with me. Thank you very much. I will definitely be in touch.
Thank you very much, Reggie.
All right, so there we go. Again, I thought that he would be a great guy to help us make sense of this whole influencer. I don't even know, sector, lanes. I don't know what you want to call it, but I was not offended when someone calls me an influencer. I see myself more of an ambassador. We talked about that before, but with the way that Matt defined it, I'm actually okay with that. We'll have to see. I don't want it to be a pejorative term, but got to work hard at all this stuff. So with that, I wanted to go ahead and transition on to a couple of more topics before we wrap up. We're getting close to the 1 hour mark. And again, I don't know how people do these super long live streams, man. I turn into a pumpkin after an hour, just generally with most things. So I do believe the Black Adam movie is going to be released tomorrow. I think my neighbor Neil keeps trying to entice me to go to the movies with him tomorrow. It is not going to happen. As I've told him, I've only been to the movie theater, I think 3 or 4 times in the last several years. So I don't think I'm going to go with him. I may have to go with my wife at some point, but I wanted to talk about this. I do believe that the Black Adam movie already has a 54 on the Rotten Tomatoes meter. It was actually 55 when I looked at this earlier. It is now down to 54, and the critics did not have a lot of positive things to say here, right? Black Adam may end up pointing the way to an exciting future for DC films, but as a standalone experience, it's a wildly uneven letdown, they say. What I will tell you is that if you are planning to see this movie, you should go see this movie and not allow these critics to tell you what is good and what is bad. I am a huge fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I'll be honest with you, I watched the various trailers that came out, and I sent somebody the message, and I was like, man, I am tempted to go to the movies. Like this was a couple of weeks ago. Like the trailers had me wanting to go to the movies, and I don't go to the movies, as I've already stated. I think that this movie is going to be fantastic. At least that is my hope. I want DC to be able to get their stuff back on track, and I want Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to do what it is that he envisions, which is building out this bigger universe at DC. We need DC to get their stuff together. That's what we need, and it potentially starts right here with this Black Adam movie, building upon the success of some of the other movies that have come out as of late from DC. So as you see what I'm saying? Do not trust them. Do not trust them. Go see it. Haters are going to hate. Yes, they do. They need a win. They needed a win. Dave Tina is not here. He is presently camped out outside of an AMC theater waiting for the theater to open tomorrow morning. He is not available right now. All right. So the last thing that I wanted to hip you guys to, and this is a piece of news that I shared earlier on Instagram. I think it was an Instagram and maybe even the TikToks. On the TikToks. If you're not following me on those platforms, I definitely want to encourage you guys to do so. But Charlie Cox, my man, Charlie Cox, to me is the quintessential person to play Daredevil, aka Matt Murdock. And we are getting word that this dude has been training with an MMA fighter. I think he's in Dublin right now. He is training. He is trying to get himself together so that when it comes time to film the Daredevil show, he is going to be ready to go. And he, I guess, can do a lot of his stunts, or, relatively a lot of his stunts. This dude's commitment to Daredevil is probably why the Daredevil show was so good originally, because he is committed to doing stuff like this, doing the MMA fighting. But he's also gone on record to say he's gone back and read a lot of the original source material to try to get in the mindset and the framework of Matt Murdock. And again, I think that is why when he shows up on screen, he shows up incredibly well. Now, I am setting Daredevil and Charlie Cox apart from maybe the way he showed up in She-Hulk. There are a lot of people that did not like how he showed up in the She-Hulk series. I will tell you, I thought it was good, but it wasn't great. There were certain aspects of the She-Hulk Daredevil thing that I did not enjoy. But I think that is more about the writer, Jessica Gao, who wrote that thing, versus what is going to be done with Daredevil as a property moving forward. I don't think we're going to get the She-Hulk version of Daredevil in the Daredevil show. I don't think that we're going to get that. Now, what's really interesting is in that article that I just put up here from comicbook.com, you guys can go read it. Jessica Gao went on record saying that the suits at Marvel didn't say no to anything that she was asking for related to Daredevil. She's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have him do this. Are you good with that? They were like, go for it. Just do what you want to do. The one sticking point, the place where they drew a line, put their foot down, was around how Daredevil looked from a costume standpoint. The red and the yellow. They were very specific about that. And potentially them saying that that's what they want might give us some insight into maybe what their larger plans are for Daredevil. And I don't want to speculate as to what those things will be, but I will allow those of you out there that are huge Daredevil fans to speculate on what that potentially may say about what version, if you will, of Daredevil we will see ultimately when his show Born Again actually debuts. So it's like an old school Daredevil from the Silver Age and early Bronze Age. You know what I'm saying? So again, we'll see what that version of him actually looks like. There you go, Dave. It is. I think you have to make this distinction. A lot of people are like, I don't want that version of Daredevil to be in the Born Again. I don't think that that's what we're going to get. I really don't think that. I think that Marvel allows its directors that have a vision to do certain things and to allow them to run with certain things to see how they turn out, right? And people liked parts of what they saw with Daredevil and She-Hulk, and there's parts that they didn't. I don't think that is going to be a determining factor on what we're going to get from Daredevil in the future. And again, I think that Charlie Cox is a perfect Daredevil. I really do. I bet we get sometime. I think we are going to get that. I think the actress that plays She-Hulk has already gone on record to basically say there will be some crossover and some continuation of that relationship into the future. But what it looks like, I don't think that we know that, right? I think that the writers will come together and they will decide, is she coming over to Daredevil show, or is Daredevil coming over to the She-Hulk show? Will there even be a second season of the She-Hulk show? Like, we don't even know that, right? We don't know where the two of them may end up. Maybe they end up in somebody else's movie or TV show. Time will tell how all of this stuff plays out. But I will tell you, yes, please. Yes, please. We definitely need some. Was it John Berthenthal? I don't know if I'm saying his name. I've said this before. Some of the Netflix casting was so spot on. Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin, sign me up for that. John B. as Punisher, sign me up. Charlie Cox as Daredevil, let's go. Let's make it happen. we'll see whether the others, I think some people are really rooting for the woman that played Karen Page and the Froggy. I think people want those folks to come back. We will see. We will see what happens with all of that. A lot of comments kind of popping up. All right. So we have one more video that is going to be dropping this week. It comes out tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is on Whilce Portacio, my new Instagram buddy, Whilce Portacio. Please go watch this video. When this video drops, please go watch this, because there's a chance that my new buddy will see the video, and I want him to see some good views on the video. So go watch the video when it drops so that Reggie's not embarrassed. Don't embarrass me in front of my new buddy, Whilce Portacio. Maybe we get him on the show. Maybe he likes what he sees and he's like, hey, can I come on the show and talk a little bit about, the new Bishop story arc that we may get? So don't ruin it for me. Okay, people? With that said, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for hanging out with me. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Matt Kennedy for coming on the show and spending a little time talking about influencers and all that kind of stuff. If you missed the show, I definitely want to encourage you to go back and watch it on Rewind. You can also listen to it on the podcast. And before you go, I want to encourage you to go ahead and smash the like button, give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel for some reason or another, I want to invite you to do that right now. Just go ahead and tap it, tickle it, do what you do. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
My body ate itself until it found its passion. They got fat while we starved, but it's power in fasting. Until I turned to ashes, I remained stoic through my rap heroics. I painted 10,000 poems, then I drank the potion of poetry and motion. I started choking, it was potent. My throat chakra downloaded, knowledge hungry. I was embarrassed I could ask my parents for money when I had a full tummy. So I asked for wisdom, better than crypto, sweeter than honey. I don't take it for granted, I don't wear capes and masks.